Hey guys, I am Caleb Giddings,
And I'm Keith Finch.
and you are watching or listening to Gunday Brunch here on the Gat Daily YouTube channel or Spotify or iTunes. And I would like to thank our sponsors for supporting this episode and all of our tomfoolery. And again, if you're watching, you can see a banner for them now.
Thank you, sponsors.
Yay, money.
Thank you very much.
All right, so if you clicked on this because of the obviously clickbaity headline, today we are talking about the best U.S. service rifle that isn't an M4 or M16 variant, because Keith and I both agree that the M4/M16 variants are the best family of service rifles the United States has ever fielded.
They are. That's an objective fact. They work the best.
They work the best. They've killed more people than cancer. And they work really, really great when you don't screw with them in their various, like the 16-inch-ish M4 configuration is really, really great. And the, M16 configuration also really, really great.
The 20-inch musket longbow is also a very great rifle. They're very good at what they do.
Did you see that meme that went around about this week? It was an old video of Eugene Stoner mocking the forward assist.
Yes, that was.
So you guys,
I was delighted with that. Like, he loads it and then he deliberately looks down at the rifle, looks at the camera, and just goes smashes it several times, just in the mocking fashion, like, this doesn't need to be here.
Like, while making hard eye contact with the camera, he's hitting the forward assist. Like, this is the dumbest thing that someone put on my otherwise perfect rifle. And he's right. I agree. I think the forward assist is stupid. I think before we get into the actual meat of this, where we talk about rifles that aren't the M16 and M4 variants, my favorite variant, and one that's very rare, especially in clone builds, is the GAU 5P/A. I forget all of the letters, but it was the Air Force's. It's basically an XM177. So if you guys know, like the shorty carbine, the Air Force's version of that, they actually got before the XM177 existed. It's the GAU 5A or P or whatever. GAU stands for Gun Aircraft Unit, because they had to buy it and pretend it was for airplanes. But basically, it was a shorty XM177, but without the forward assist. And Troy made a repro of that a few years ago, and I had one, and it was really, really great. And I sold it because I don't really shoot rifles a lot. And now I go on Gunbroker every now and then to look for one, and it doesn't exist, and like it's impossible to find. And when you do find it, it's like $3,000, and I'm like, sad Caleb. So
I also remember they recently redid the GAU 5. They brought it back as a survival kit gun, and it now has one of the takedown assemblies with it, where you can put it, you put the barrel on and the gas system on as one unit. So it's very, very compact, which is one of the reasons the GAU 5 was picked out in the configuration. Is it was smooth. You could put it in an aircraft without adding a lot of weight, or B, taking up a lot of space that is needed for other things you need to put in an aircraft.
Yeah.
And
so
the new takedown one is really cool.
So fun facts about that one, because I actually have, it's an Air Force weapon system, and I've actually seen them in the wild. The neat thing about it is that whole gun was funded through commercial off-the-shelf purchases, or what we call COTS. And it wasn't like, it didn't go, and the whole reason why they wanted, and there's like, every time people see one, they're like, oh, well, do you have this feature? And why doesn't it have an optic? Why does it have iron sights and all that? And I'll tell you why. Is because that gun was designed in its broken apart bit to fit in the box under the ejection seat in a modern fighter, right? And this box has to have a bunch of other stuff in it. It's got to have a radio. It's got to have some other survival gear. And so to get that carbine to fit, along with all of the other goodies that go in this very small bit of real estate, they're like, all right, you know what, fuck an optic. And that's why it's got a pistol grip that folds.
It's a survival rifle, guys. This is not the Goon Squad rifle. This is the I'm fucked rifle.
This is I ejected out of an F-16 over Bosnia, and I would like to have something other than a shitty little pistol. Not that,
Uh-huh.
our pistols suck, but like I would like, me personally, if I ejected in hostile territory, I would much rather have a 5.56 short boy than an M9. And I love the M9.
Yep.
Please give
Yeah.
me the carbine.
M9's great. M17, very good pistols. They're still pistols in a situation where I want a rifle.
I want a rifle and I want 30 round mags, baby.
Yep.
So anyway, all right, let's get down to this one because, everybody's always like, yeah, let's get off the M16's nuts because it's the best service rifle that the U.S. has ever fielded. So we're talking about the best service rifle that isn't the M16. And we both have opinions about this. And I, of course, have picked a contrarian opinion, and I have no idea what you've picked. So you go first.
All right. Well, I'm while not going to go with the M16, I am going to go with the M16's designer. My favorite service weapon that was not an M16 is the Stoner 63.
Wait, did we ever actually issue the Stoner 63?
We did to some United States Marines and the SEALs. It was in service from 63 to 83. We didn't have a lot of them. We did not have a lot of them, but we had some of them. And the reason I like it is very simple. It was our first attempt at a Lego set gun that could do everything. Cool. Oh yeah, the 63 is real cool. It had a reversible receiver. So if you put the receiver one way up, it was a rifle. And if you put this receiver another way up, it was a light machine gun. So this thing could play saw or regular rifle or carbine. You could have a short barrel on it, longer barrel on it. There were a couple weird variations, like a top feed magazine light machine gun configuration that was like, hey, we needed to get rid of that after the Enfields in World War II. We don't need top feed machine guns anymore. Let's just use, regular ones. It was just a really cool, and I think the most popular variant of it was the light machine gun variant configuration, which could use a 150 round belt in a drum that sat underneath it, and was just a good, nice squad support weapon. But you also had a nice shortened carbine version, and you had a longer rifle version. And if I recall correctly, this thing could use folding stocks and a couple of other things that were fairly new to service weapons in the 60s through the 80s, just because of how this system went together. I'm not 100% certain on the folding stock, but like the 63A, it was a very cool weapon. It ran on a piston system. It's gas system, different positions. It had adjustable gas. It had all the cool things that we like on very, very modern rifles. And it did it in 63. And it was this modular system that the US keeps chasing every now and then goes, well, actually, we'd rather not, because it's hard. It's easier to purpose build a system and then purpose build another system and then just pick up the one you need, as opposed to, here, Mr. Armorer, I need this made into the light machine gun configuration. Please do that while you also doing regular inventory and ordering parts and this and that and that and this and this and that. And by the way, is your sharp class up to date? And so it just became more practical to use purpose-built systems as opposed to a modular configure system. But this thing had a rifle variant, a carbine, an automatic rifle, light machine gun, medium fixed machine gun, a fixed machine gun.
What's a a vehicle mount?
And then a survival rifle mode. So this thing had 3, 4, 8 different modes. It was a transformer. Kind of cool.
Robots in disguise.
Yes. And I actually, I went and wandered over to Robinson Armaments booth because Alexander Robinson got some of these leftover kits and put them together into the rifle configuration. And they're really cool. I mean, it's all the stamped rifle metal goodness that you expect out of the 60s rifles. And it's just nice. It's fun. So that's my favorite. The Stoner 63 is my favorite.
So I would say I agree with all of that. I didn't know. I'm going to be very honest. Everybody who's listening to this knows that I'm not a rifle nerd. So it should not come to a surprise of any of you that I was barely peripherally aware of the existence of the Stoner 63 before this conversation. And like, if you were watching my screen, I was literally Googling it and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, neato.
Oh, I had the page up too, just FYI, so I didn't miss a variant, because I'm like, this thing was the Lego set before we invented like the M-Lock, put everything on Lego set that we did with the M4 SOP mod kits. Like we did this and then we did it again, because now we have optics and lights and lasers.
So I am going to say that the best service rifle. So I'm going to go in a slightly different direction with that, because, and I actually put some thought into this, and I don't know, maybe contrarian opinion is the right way to describe this, but I think that the best service rifle that was not an M16 variant, to find one that is as good, and I could actually make a case that this one was better than the M16 because of the fact that it was creating ripples in US military procurement for 100 years after it was used, is the Springfield Model 1861 rifle musket, which was the most commonly used long arm in the Union Army during the Civil War. And the reason why this gun is so influential is a number of things. So it wasn't, interestingly enough, it wasn't as capable of fine accuracy as the rifle muskets fielded by the Confederate Army of the time, because the sights that it had were designed for mass production. And that was one of the things that made this rifle interesting, was it was the first rifle that was designed from the ground up for mass production. It was designed to be easy to make, easy to push into service, and easy for troops to operate. And it was very accurate. And obviously, for a muzzleloader, it was very reliable. But the 1861 Springfield had ripples that spread all the way through military procurement up until Vietnam, because it was after the Civil War, after it was the most common rifle used during the Civil War by the Union, it became the basis for the early trapdoor, for the early cartridge conversions to breech loaders. It was the basis for the eventual trapdoor Springfields, the 1871 and the 1884. And the Army, as we've talked about in other episodes, really hates changing things. And you see that with the...
That's why we got 100 years to get to 6.8 millimeter.
Yeah. And that's why, like, you go from the trapdoor Springfield, you go from a 58 caliber muzzle loader to a trapdoor Springfield, to a slightly upgraded trapdoor Springfield, to the Krag Jorgensen, to the 1903. Like, there is a direct lineage of service rifles, and you can see them all sort of adhering to the same basic concept of rifle, of how a rifleman should operate, that starts in the Civil War, and it starts with the 1861. Because back then, the difference between a rifle and an artillery piece was the rifle shot a smaller round. The ranges of your rifle and your artillery piece in the 1860s and even up to the 1870s were very, very similar. So you had
that's why you had lines of cannon sitting on the sidelines at about the same distance as your infantry, until your infantry closed and fought hand to hand.
And what's interesting too about the 61 is that with the Civil War is where you start to see the first breakdown in modern combat of that hand fighting, because the 61 was so accurate at such long ranges. You would have massed walls of rifle fire engaging formations at 500 meters, which is like walking into a buzzsaw. There's very interesting historical accounts of the time that if you remove words like, if you remove mentions of the specific technology, depictions of some of the combat in the Civil War reads very similarly to depictions of combat in World War I. It was the first time you had truly mass-produced rifles, and you had these, mass formations of rifle fire, and you had, effective, really, truly effective artillery that you could aim, because the 1861 was rifled. it was actually accurate. It wasn't like, the effective range of a musket, a true smoothbore musket, is about 50 yards. The effective range of a Springfield 1861 is 500 yards. That's a big difference. And then
that's only a factor of 10 on your effective range. And if you look at rifles today, we're still using 500 yards as like that's a hard limit for soldiers with eyes. Like it's very difficult without mechanical intervention to be reasonably or effectively accurate further than that, because A, you can't see it, and B, all the micro errors in shooting a rifle, no matter how good it is, don't really change the equation all that much. It's just you're at the extreme edges of what it is to be fairly effective and have those percentages that say, hey, we're still accurate, we're still effective on target.
Yeah. So I think that and what's funny is, this conversation is one that, we're not like arguing here. We just think both of these rifles and these weapon systems are really cool.
And I would completely agree that the 1861, for all the reasons you listed, is a very cool service rifle and arguably one of the best service rifles that aren't the M16 series weapon systems, because of how well it shaped modern military logistics from procurement on forward. Whereas mine, I took the hipster path.
Yours is cool.
Mine's just cool, and it got used by like a few hundred guys in Vietnam. They had their Lego machine gun. Like,
now, the real contrarian opinion would have been to say that the best American service rifle is the AK-47, because we do actually maintain a stock of AK-47s.
Yes, we do.
Technically makes them American service rifles. So, that's the real the best American rifles, an AK-47.
AK-47. They're in inventory, ladies and gentlemen. They are in inventory.
I half expect somebody to say that in the comments, like they're going to listen to the first half of this episode, and then they're going to be like, "What about the AKs that we have for special operations?" I'm like, "Shut up."
Yep. Yes, we have those. I know some are kept for special operations, but I also know that commercial off the shelf or other procurements can grab as needed because they have that budget flexibility.
And they use them for OPFOR and shit
but
too.
They use them for OPFOR. They use them for demo. Like the most I see AKs come out of inventories, because they are spread out, guys. They're spread out across the nation. So an armory might have like 2 to 4 of them for a station, because they're used for like foreign weapon familiarization and everything like that, so that you can take a group of soldiers who barely know how to shoot the M4 and M16, because boot camp doesn't teach that anymore apparently, and then you take them over and you show them this AK-47, this how this works, this is where your charging handle's at and everything like that. And depending on, the grade of your instructor or the NCOs who pulled it or whatnot, they might get a decent education on the AK, or it might be like, AK. Sand people noises.
They're Tusken Raiders. You can't use that word. Oh man. But all right, guys, so that's it for this week's episode. If you guys have a service rifle that you think is better than either of these, or cooler or more interesting, not the AK-47 obviously,
we covered that.
Yeah, I almost made a case for the M2 carbine, because full auto M1 carbine is the tightest shit in the world.
Oh god, that's it. The M1 carbine, always a neat little gun, and I understand where it existed in practical speaking with the military force, but then the mad lads are like, what if we make it happy switch?
There are used M2 carbines, fully transferable, that are going for like used Mazda Miata prices right now, so like 10 to 15 grand. And I'm like, if I no joke, if I had 15 grand of fuck you money, I would have an M2. I would 100.
Yes.
And I would take that thing to the range and just go, hang on 1 second, click. That would be it. All right, guys. So that's really it for this episode. M2 carbines are cool. Thank you everybody for watching and listening and supporting the show. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all those fun YouTube actions.
Later.